When you wake up to it, right, you can't go backwards. You realize where you were meant to be as a human. A lot of the anxieties go away, a lot of the stressors that you have go away. This is gonna be the cure to our mental health problem. This is the cure to our climate catastrophe. All the things that we've created problems with in life are because we detached ourselves from the land.
Let's play a game. Forget everything you thought you knew. Start over again. Old things change. Yeah, they've changed.
I'm Sabrina Beachdell. I am a professional life coach. And essentially what that looks like is helping people access that guide inside themselves that loves them unconditionally and has every answer they could ever seek. And there's a lot of gunk between that and everything else in the world. And so just helping people communicate with that so that they can live their entire truth, which results in things like this.
Hi, I'm Graham Langdon, and we're here at Earthen Hollow, where we are creating a network of food accessibility through distributing food grown locally by local farmers to local communities. And also inviting lots of artists and artisans and creators to come here and create. And in that way, creating a testbed for new models for structures and living and food production and community.
How long have you been building this?
This property? A year and 2 months.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's unreal.
When you grow food on a small scale for your local community, problems with growing food are suddenly solved and it becomes a regenerative system that benefits all aspects of the ecology and the environment if you're doing it right. And it's pretty much the exact opposite from the way that like industrial food is produced. Even food that's grown organically, they can still use all sorts of different like weird sprays on it, and they can still irradiate it, and you just don't really know where something is coming from or how much carbon has been input into the system or output to like get it there.
Help us understand the difference between regenerative farming and farming that depletes the soil.
When you grow food on a large scale, it's typically done through industrial practices, which involve a lot of chemicals and a lot of machinery, and it's very extractive. And they're just like inputting all of the nutrients that they need through fertilizers and chemicals, and then they're also controlling weeds and pests through really harsh fungicides and herbicides and pesticides and things like that. So this is a perennial garden here. Perennials are really amazing because they require the least amount of input, especially compared to annual vegetables where you have to water them every day and plant them every year. Perennials you pretty much plant once and they will just produce food for years and years to come. So behind us here we have grapes, and these grapevines are maybe like 5 to 8 years old, and they'll produce tons of grapes every year. And then we have about 30 blueberry bushes there that will produce many, many blueberries, and then we have 2 rows of elderberries, which are highly medicinal and boost your immune system. Yeah, you plant it once, you get it established, and then it will just like produce, not forever, but for, you know, decades probably. So the bees are part of our local community here, of course, and without them, food doesn't grow because we need to pollinate flowers to have fruits and vegetables. So one of the big things we wanted to do when we got bees was to just grow a lot of wildflowers, and we're in the process of converting as much of the grassland to wildflower as we can.
How many people know that they wouldn't have food if bees weren't pollinating flowers?
Probably not many.
I didn't know that, but I did know that like 95% of the bees have died over the past like 100 years.
It's a crisis, yeah.
And so that seems to be a problem.
It's a huge
People
problem.
don't care about it. It's like, it's crazy because like you said, you're eating vegetables out of the can, and it's like a lot of those people are people who, if they knew that, maybe they'd take an interest. Maybe they'd get into beekeeping.
Right.
Maybe they'd want to plant a wildflower field, like get some land. I mean,
It's an emergency, really, yeah, the bees.
the reason that you have these flowers here and the idea of pollination and giving space for bees is like one of the most integral things to our food system that is overlooked. So much of it is farmland that's like really depleted. So again, we compare, what you're saying about food security, we compare that with like, okay, people need a place to be, people need purpose, people need to be relieved of societal pressure, people need food security, people need housing. And like, if there's funding for land to be purchased with that intention, now you can start taking all of this degraded farmland and actually regenerating it. Because if we're not doing that, then we're not gonna have a planet to live on anymore. So it's like all of this has to be paired with this focused effort to actually build soil. Like if we don't build soil, because every year, like all of this farmland, which most of the country is just all this farmland that's like topsoil just blowing off into the atmosphere and extracting nutrients and not restoring it. And so that's huge. That's a huge part of this, is like people need to be coming together and learning the skills to actually reverse that a little bit, or else it's just gonna keep spiraling. Industrial farming doesn't look at ecology.
Right.
Like it's usually monoculture. It's usually just like, we're gonna grow acres and
acres of tomatoes
of this one thing. And so when you grow just one thing on that much land, you're depleting the soil.
Yeah, so like a tomato's gonna take out certain things and put back certain things. A soybean's gonna take out, put back. A chicken's gonna take out and put back.
Yeah.
And so it just makes it work together. It comes to a balance, whereas when you're just trying to grow one thing, you're just sucking out that same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, and so much of what needs to be put back into the soil for longevity is carbon. And so oftentimes industrial agriculture will grow something, harvest it, and then till it. And every time you till, you're getting rid of all of this carbon and you're blowing topsoil into the atmosphere. And there's so much land available. And there's other people starting to scoop it up too with other intentions,
It's like Bill Gates is the biggest owner of farmland now.
Yeah, like what's his plan?
Yeah. And whenever you hear something like that, you get a little nervous.
My name is Sage Stoneman, and I'm out here currently building this house. It's going to be a cob house. The chickens are helping me. So this is going to be built with earth for the walls, and all of the framing that you see behind me is cedar that I harvested here on site. For me, natural building is like, it's a process of listening to the environment in which you're building. So even if that's in an urban environment and you don't have natural materials, you could use trash. Like you could put trash in your walls as insulation. So for me, it's like, how can we make the process of construction more natural? Which I think as humans, we inherently know how to do, because since there have been humans on the planet, humans have been creating shelter for themselves. So it's this inherently human thing that has sort of gotten taken over by an industrial, consumerist, capitalist concept of providing housing for people as quickly and efficiently as possible, without regard for long-term repercussion of the planet, and without regard for all the people that are being left in the wayside without housing. So for me, natural building is a lot more than just using natural materials. It's like bringing humanity back to how we approach construction in general. It's absolutely terrible what the lumber industry is doing, and the way that it clear cuts old growth forests and then monoculture plants new forests, and with no regard for ecology and no regard for the planet in general. And then the prices are reflecting the fact that it's just not sustainable. I think anyone who's been doing any construction lately knows that lumber prices have nearly tripled over the last few years, and that's because you can't keep cutting down forests at the rate that we are. But what you can do is selectively thin forests with an understanding of ecology. So we are surrounded by good lumber here, and there's enough to build many houses on this property without negatively affecting the forest. And in fact, you could have a positive influence on the forest. So this is the kind of machinery that's essentially like, as a landowner, this is an investment in the health of the property long term, and sort of a way of paying homage to the natural world and interacting with it in a way that's responsible. My approach to building is just very organic in the sense that the materials are natural and also the process is organic, and it's sort of just tuning into the environment and seeing what's available first. So rather than, coming into a space with an idea and imposing that idea on the space and then sort of importing and exploiting and consuming as much as needed to create that vision, it's like start with the space and see what's available. And so in this case, there were cedar trees that had a disease called cedar apple rust that was spreading to the apple orchard here, so they needed to be removed anyway. And Graham has a sawmill here on site, so right away it was like, all right, the whole thing's gonna be built out of cedar because that's what's available and that's being removed anyway. And then we also have brilliant clay and sand beneath our feet. So we're gonna get some straw and mix it with the sand and the clay and build the walls out of that. Yeah, and a lot of people just literally don't have the space to chill out, or the space to tune in with themselves, like physical or psychic or emotional space. I mean, it's just like so much input and distraction all the time. A lot of people don't really have a moment alone with themselves, in nature or in a place where they're not stressed, thinking about things that they feel like they need to grip. Those moments of actual emptiness and stillness are just so cast aside by our collective narrative, around our collective value system. And I think the more that we can just sort of encourage each other, emptiness is valuable. The more that we can just kind of slip that in a little bit into each other's lives, I think that changes a lot.
The reaction that's happening right now, you guys making this documentary, me working in a field that is all about helping people understand their potential, you recultivating land, we are in an expansion right now, and there is so much more capacity to reach people that are listening, that never even knew to listen to this kind of thing before, but they hear the phrase, you can heal, create your reality, you can live however you want, and it's starting to catch in more people's heads than it ever has before, and I think that's critical.
It's a